Hey everybody, welcome to the AFLW show. Sorry for the delay in the start this evening. Mum duties called and I had to make sure my little one was fed, changed and in bed. So bit of a late start, but I am joined once again by Pommy. Good evening, how are you?
I'm not so bad, how are you?
Good, you're becoming my regular co-host here and
Yeah, I was bench favourite at the start of pre-season, but cemented my place in the best 22. So
you have cemented your place in the best 22, and I said it last week. We want to come back this week with a win, and we have. So let's kickstart the show.
What's going on? Fucking did Martin's been very impressive. Every single point.
They call the Carlton Football, isn't it?
Vesio with all the experience in the world. She kicks.
There it is, just on half time. Manny Prasparkas.
You're in control tonight, so that
was my fault. I got you all excited. I got you all excited with the different show.
No, that would have been Monday night, that tune.
I'm so used to Monday night as well. So yeah, I forgot. I'm either men or the woman this week. So it was the women's.
No, well, I would like to start the show with a bit of this.
And as Beachy says, he's right. You've got me on after a win. Usually I'm the curse.
So, we got the dub, and I thought it'd be good to put the theme song on in a short snippet because we got the dub. And let's go straight into the review. I thought that was a very comprehensive win. And the way we moved the ball was probably some of the best ball movement we've seen from the girls all season. It was a better game aesthetically compared to the Geelong game where we won. And I watched, because from where I was sitting, you couldn't really see the other side of the ground. So I rewatched the game yesterday, and I was able to actually sit there and analyze it side on, because that's probably the best view, is always the wing. And I kept hearing Georgia G's name in the commentary, and I think it was probably her best game for the year. Thoughts?
Oh, 100%. I thought the intent from the better ball users on our side, Dalpos, Egan, G, they were really active in trying to get the ball to be shorter and a bit more creative license for Georgia and Grace to take the game on a little bit. I thought Prasparkas was phenomenal as well. She didn't really get the plaudits, but I thought she was the one looking to go shorter as opposed to blazing. There was a lot more control from her, which set the intent. St Kilda are trash, let's be honest, before we get excited. Yeah. But I thought they did the job. They bullied them into submission as well around the contested ball, which we have been horrific at all year. So that was beautiful to see.
Yeah, well, just looking at some of the stats that we so come to love and hate when it comes to this football club. Our big ball winners, as you mentioned, so Jess Dalpos, 12 disposals, Grace Egan, 16, Georgia G, 20, Karen Harrington, 16, Mimi Hill, 18, Abby McKay, 12, 20 from Prasparkas. Keely Shearer had another good game, 11 disposals, Nicola 12, Trudgeon 12, Vesio 14, Daisy Walker 14. And it's just like when you have an even spread of players that are competing and are putting pressure on, it's crazy. Like listening to the commentary, they were saying that tackles were down for both sides because our uncontested possession was just absolutely smashing it. And we were lowering our eyes. We were doing the chip, chip, chip. We didn't bomb it long unless Bree Moody was in the goal square or we lowered the eyes. We ran it right into 50 and we put the pressure on the St Kilda defence. And to their credit, they held us scoreless in that third quarter. And I thought their best player was probably Tilly Lucas-Rod, who backed it up with another really good performance for the Saints tonight, which we'll touch on when we preview the Giants. But I just thought that it was a comprehensive win. Obviously, yes, St Kilda were missing a handful of their better players, but you'd think being a side just above them and having them have been as competitive as they have been against like the likes of Brisbane, who are flag favourites, you'd think they would have played a little bit a better brand of football, St Kilda. So, I agree with Beachy. Where has this performance been at the start of the season? 100%.
Spot on. I think the big thing as well is if you watch St Kilda tonight and you look at the raw numbers, I think the score probably doesn't do it injustice what we did to them in the terms of what actually happened in the game. In the opening parts of the game, St Kilda were arguably the better side, probably for the first 5 minutes. And you saw tonight, they got a run on quite early. You look at the inside 50s of that game, Carlton versus St Kilda, it's very even. It's very even. We had 60% possession of the ball as well, only 6 tackles in it. It shows how fine the margin was. Like the girls at Carlton took their opportunity early, which deflated St Kilda. And then they really did what a senior side does. They bully them, beat them up a bit. You saw the difference this week with St Kilda when they played GWS. They got up and about early. They gave it as good as they got to GWS and ran them close. So it's going to be very interesting when we get onto the GWS conversation that can the girls back up that fast start? They were very ruthless and you could see the confidence grow in the second and third quarter. The girls were enjoying it all of a sudden. They were taking on them risky kicks, looking for the corridor. They were starting to really trust their tools. Be interesting to see if GWS don't allow that. Will the girls go back into their shells and start panicking again?
That's it. Well, Lewis makes a really good point. We were set up really well behind the ball, and the commentary was complimentary of that. So Joey Montagna and I think it was Ali Blackburn that was commentating alongside Eddie Betts. They were very complimentary of how well we were set up behind the ball because every time St Kilda would try and like hit a target in that forward 50, we'd have that pressure and we'd have that that loose defender. And Mua was just incredible. And her rebound 50 was exceptional. And she kept Greiser to no score, which I said she was a danger player last Wednesday night. And I also said there was a couple of others like Xenos and all of those girls that were held to account and held accountable for their players. And we just ran them off their feet because our speedsters actually wanted the ball and they had intent to the ball and we were hunting in numbers and our basic skills were phenomenal. So it just goes to show what happens with a little bit of application to the game plan or a little bit of application to the tackle or the intensity. Imagine what it can do if you had started it at the beginning of the year.
Oh, definitely. I mean, confidence breeds that kind of thing as well. I mean, like we say, the girls got better as the game went on as well. They started to really take it. I did think if we're going to pick some negatives, though, the second half of that, St Kilda started to flood the back line and we didn't have it our own way. Only the 12 points scored. It didn't look as free-flowing once they sharpened up. I've got to give the coach credit there. He stopped the rot, really. They never looked dangerous with their inside 50s. We picked them off. So it's going to be interesting because there's a hell of a lot of positives there. But like I think the big thing for me was G getting her most disposals. The ball was in the right kind of people's hands for Carlton's game plan. And G was sensational. She was everywhere as well. Like her work engine, her work ethic, spot on. So hopefully it's a sign of things to come. because Gearing seemed to do the ugly work, which G was kind of resorting to do the last couple of weeks. She had a bit more creative license, and that's who we want with creative license.
Imagine actually playing a player that could play that role, Maddie Gearin. We've been calling for it for ages now. We've been calling for it. And the big shock for me was the dropping of Charlotte Wilson when the team came out on Friday, and we were discussing it, and it shocked a few people, I think. And it'll be interesting to see if they keep the same lineup against the Giants in Canberra on Sunday.
Yeah,
and yeah, it'll be interesting to see if she comes back into the side or if she stays in Melbourne.
Big question for Half. I mean, do you break up a winning team? I mean, he'd be a brave man to drop any goal after last week, because I don't think there was any stragglers last week at all. I think they all played their part in some way. You mentioned Shearer as well at the start. She came in and she was very good as well. I also shout out to Jess Good as well.
Yes.
I thought that allowed Bree Moody. That was a big part of the game plan for her to move forward with the ball and actually be a tall target. And you saw how dangerous that was, that Carlton actually had a girl of height creating a bit of damage, which then allowed Darcy to have some crumbs to feed off. It wasn't their job to take a high mark.
No.
They went back to what they know well, living at the feet of a talented girl. So
that's right.
That's a very important thing.
Well, that's exactly right. And it's probably Jess Good's best performance for us. I thought she played an exceptional game. And there was a couple of times where she picked the ball up below her knees, which is not easy for someone of her height, and she delivered it like pinpoint precise. So you're right. And having a tall target that can actually take those marks, or at least bring the ball to ground for our crumbing forwards like Darcy, it gives them the opportunity to score like they did. And Darcy was electric. They were fantastic. Just the way that they sprung to life after so long. I think they've been a little bit lackluster in their performances across the year, but the last 2 weeks they've actually started to gain that confidence. They've kicked a couple of goals now. They're really, really excited about this group. And I know a few times the girls have said, stick with us. And it's paid off, finally. The girls came across to all the fans after the game, and it was actually really, really good energy. And I actually felt really happy to be at the football, because we're always at our happiest when any form of bagger is winning. So I just personally, I thoroughly enjoyed the game. It was just good to sit back and just watch the girls do their thing without, losing it. And we didn't, I can honestly say I sat there and didn't say one word about the umpires, because they were fantastic for once in their lives.
I still hate every decision that goes against us. So if you watch the live, I had a few choice words to say. But no, I agree. And like Peter nails it here. And this is what I want to really be clear on. Like, standard setting at Carlton is really important. So yeah, they beat the girls. They beat St Kilda. It was fantastic. I can't fault it. But this is a damning start. 25-1, the top 6 are against the bottom 8, which is a worry. And it shows that we are the best of the worst, really. But what I'm looking at from here on in, we've got a micro percentage of winning the finals, getting into finals. So while that's there, Carlton girls have got to look at smashing GWS, smashing Gold Coast, and then being in the position for Melbourne where we can give it a 25-2. Bring these bottom 8 side and say, look, we're ready for next year. We're ready for next year, and finish the year strong. Because, you never know, they might get into finals. I'm not saying they will. Stranger things have happened, but they've got to go into that mindset that one performance doesn't abstain the horrible stuff we've seen. Because I thought that was quite damning at the start of that game, seeing the table when this was bottom of the laddered clash. Like, we're nowhere near St Kilda's calibre. We're another end. So that is a concern. We don't want to be there. We want to be in that top half.
You're right. And tonight's game, which we'll touch on, is just proof that you can bounce back and have a really good performance. St Kilda only kicked 2 points against us. They came out and kicked 5 goals, 9 tonight. So, like, it just goes to show, and I give credit to Nick Del Santo because he's taken this group, this St Kilda group, and he's starting to change the way that they play football. And it's actually a really exciting brand to watch. And I'm looking forward to seeing what St Kilda can do in the next couple of years. But look, I'm always happy for a win. We'll take the 4 points. It shoots us back up to 10th. So we're not dwindling along the bottom of the ladder anymore. So I'm happy to sit where we are. But moving into 2023, with the 4 new teams coming in, we need to be really careful with our list, and especially with the 2 Melbourne teams coming in Hawthorn and Essendon. And if you follow the VFLW at the moment, Essendon are absolutely just dominating. They're the first 2 games they've played, they've won by 98 and 78 or something like crazy like that. And they've got our VFL girls this weekend. So if they continue on their merry way, there's going to be a lot of AFLW girls, not just our girls, but girls from across Melbourne knocking on the door at Essendon saying, let me in.
Spot on. And like, we'll talk about next week soon, but like GWS as well, got to remember they are in a high likelihood of playing finals. Like, this is every game's a knockout for them, but they will be looking, particularly when they look ahead of them, Gold Coast and the Doggies and Collingwood, 2 points separate them. All 3 sides above them have had proper banana skins in games, particularly the Doggies and Collingwood. Every week's different for them girls. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're horrible. So they'll be looking at this game and thinking, we've got away with one against St Kilda. Now we've got to smash Carlton in our backyard and really hurt Carlton because we're at home, and really send a message to the rest. So a lot to play out. It's going to be a tough game.
It is, and well, we might as well jump straight into the preview of this week. So let's talk about this Giants St Kilda game. I watched the last 8 minutes of the last quarter because obviously I came home and I thought, well, I completely forgot it was on, to be honest, because I think this is the last of the catch-up games, if I'm right. So I think they're all level pegging now. So we've all played 7 games, so they can continue the year as is. But St Kilda hit the front with about 2 minutes to go. And Tani White, who just come back from suspension, kicked a lovely goal from 40 after a free kick. And all they had to do was hold on. The ball ended up in their forward line. They peppered, I think, 2 or 3 shots at goal after that, St Kilda. But to the Giants' credit, they, in that last 40 seconds, they managed to get the ball from their defence into their forward line. And it was just unlucky on St Kilda's part that they were stung with a 50-metre penalty with about 10 seconds to go. And it put the Giants player 15 out in front. And obviously kicked a goal after the siren for the win. But just having a quick look at the stats from this game, and looked pretty even across the board. St Kilda had more inside 50s. Contested possessions, there was one between them, 94 and 93. Tackles were high. Clearances were in Giants' way. But these 2 teams seem like they're around about the same level, which to me indicates that if we're going to win, we need to put the foot down in the first quarter, like you mentioned before.
Well, I think if you look at the last 2 games they played, they got a hiding from Adelaide and Melbourne. So the GWS girls have been in the pointy end of the season. They've had to play the 2 best sides in the league, and they've got battered. And I think what was common with them is they stopped Cora Staunton playing, who phenomenal Irish girl. Like, we are privileged to see. I think she's top 5 in the league for goals. She's taken to
40s.
And she's taken to AFL like a duck to water. She used to tear it up in the Gaelic League. So she knows what she's doing, and she's tough. She's really hard. She's quick and strong aerially as well. But Adelaide and Melbourne both got the jump early. They took away that because they've got quality throughout the park. Alice Parker probably has claims to be one of the best players in the league. And mate Alicia Eva, she's just as good as well. They've got quality in that team. But one thing is common with them: if you bully them a bit early and you don't give them that easy out, they've got problems. They're tough. But Alice Parker will love playing Pressparkis because she goes on the toughest girl every week. She loves a tackle, and she's a bit like Matt DeBoer in the terms of she finds 20 touches and stops her opposite number playing. She's got an uncanny ability at stopping the best play and her get lots of balls. So be an interesting matchup, that midfield.
It will. And it kind of reminds me of Andrew Carrazzo as well. He was also one of those prolific ball winners, but still managed to stop his opponent. For me, I think the big one will be Nicola Barr. She's had a bit of an up and down season, but when she's on, she's on. Bearing in mind they've got a shorter turnaround for this game compared to us. So we'll have the week, they'll only have the 4 or 5 days of the turnaround. So bearing that in mind, we'll also be playing Katie Loynes. This will be the first time we come up against Katie, and it breaks my heart to even say that in a sentence. But yeah, no, just looking through their list, they're even Haneen Zarika, she's one of those in and under players that goes in hard for the football, and she comes out the other side with it. So it'll be an interesting midfield battle for sure.
I mean, they've got a very talented list. I mean, like watching the game today as well, Dalloway really stood out as well. One of the new girls for her, got lightning pace as well, and her and Katie Loynes as well were probably won them that game when St Kilda were on top, because they made a lot of tackles between them and made it very hard for St Kilda's wider players to get any space. And that's something we did last week really well. Obviously, Egan and G were phenomenal just coming in from them wide channels. So it's going to be a tough matchup. Like, just because Carlton battered St Kilda and they've ran GWS close, I think that finals berth just dangling in GWS's eyes. They won't want to run it close. They had a scare today and they got away with it.
Yeah.
Then they're not a pushover, let's put it that way. There's a lot of talent there.
No, there is a lot of talent there, and that's something that we need to walk into this game with. And it happens a lot in the men's, and we found this so many times. Like the game that we'll not name that took place in Adelaide, we won't mention that game, but we have a habit of walking into games thinking the game's already won. And that's something that shouldn't happen. Because you don't know what the opposition's going to bring on the day. And I think it's just, they're a danger game, GWS. If we want to finish this year on a good note and actually like cement what last week meant, we need to beat the Giants this week. And we need to play in the same fashion that we did.
I couldn't agree more. And the wonderful thing about Carlton, and this is where we talk about culture, it starts with us. I remember 3 times last year where Carlton won and everyone was like, because everyone knows round 2, I sacked David Teague. That was it. He was done to me. And the amount of PMs after the Gold Coast game, which we limped to, and we won that, and they were like, oh, where's your sack Teague now? And then we got battered the next 2 games. There was the Hawthorn game where everyone got excited, and then we went on a 3-game losing streak. We're very quick to give praise when they do one thing right. I think now for the girls, they're in that transitional period. I want to see 2-3 wins, and then, okay, let's talk about turning the corner. We saw St Kilda tonight, how good St Kilda can be and what they're capable of, which we saw in the last quarter, I thought, against us. I thought they were probably the better side against us. So we've got to look at that. Let's not run before we've walked a little bit. So let's see if they can do what they did against GWS. Yeah, let's see if they can do it then against Gold Coast. But then Melbourne's the test. So it's all to play for. This is a big game for both sides, I think.
Yeah, well, this is our last travel. I don't think we've travelled much this year, to be honest. Which means we've got one more home game now that that's been locked in against Gold Coast next week. Then we travel most likely to Casey Fields for our last game against the D's. And every time we seem to play at Casey Fields seems to be an absolute slaughter because they seem to have that place as their little domain out there in Casey Fields, Melbourne. And Melbourne are very, very good at the way they move the football and the way they look inside and the way that they carry the football. So that'll be a huge test for our girls because we've seen all the teams that have just come out and smashed us this year, but none of them have the ball movement Melbourne do.
I think Melbourne, for me, are the best side in the league as well at setting up against the opposition's strengths. They're very good at taking away your firepower. They're not a free scoring side like Adelaide and North Mel and Fremantle. They play that sexy brand, them too. Melbourne play probably as close to a men's style game as you'll see. They set up to stop you playing, and then they control the game, and they're very good at controlling it and make you chase shadows for 4 quarters.
Yeah, well, they've got that big, tall forward. What's her name again? Taylor Harris.
Yeah, she's pretty good, isn't she?
Oh, what I would pay to have her back at our football club.
I think what makes it worse,
is
she plays her best position for them as well. They just leave her in the goal square. She's got nothing else to do other than just be big, menacing, and take marks. And she shows what good management does, doesn't she? She's enjoying her footy. She's playing beautiful football as well. She's deadly.
She is. She looks fitter. She's dropped 7 kilos. She's in a really good headspace. And, she's just playing amazing football. And I just enjoy watching her every week. Too bad it's not in the navy blue, but that's okay.
If you squint, there's enough blue on it to make you think it's Carlton.
Look, that's probably as close as we're going to get to her back in a navy blue jumper. But no, she's an absolute superstar and wish her nothing but love and good football.
I don't. Fuck her. She doesn't play for us anymore. She can get fucked.
Look, she can probably not play well against us. That'd be lovely. Thank you. But I can see her kicking at least 4. That's just me being mean. You mentioned that you wanted to bring up something tonight about equal pay, which I know we've spoken about before in terms of equality between the boys and the girls when it comes to what we call elite athletes, because I know being the girls, it's not a full-time thing, and the boys, it is. So, go. Floor is yours.
Yeah, well, I mean, I wanted to talk about, I don't know if anyone follows the female soccer. We know me being a Pom, naturally, I do, but there's been a revolutionary landmark in equal pay in America. The US national team have lobbied 24 million payout, and there's now provisos in place for them to be equally paid in the national side like their men's side are. And what I found really interesting is you're hearing this in the Australian league, that the girls need paying more. And I think it's a great correlation to show what the Americans have done well, because in the 5 years that the American men's league has been professionalized, it started small. It's grown by 33% a year in attendance at games. So much so this year that the highest attendance in men's and women's is a female game. So more men are watching it. And also the revenue and commercial marketing is higher in the females than it is the men. The females are actually making more money than their male counterparts for the corporation. And I thought it was a really interesting thing because the AFL recently did their financial report, a massive loss.
Yeah.
The funding with the women gone down to 18 now as well, 18 million because of them expenditures. And it's an average of 30,000, isn't it? Everyone on the list, if it works out between all of them, which you think 18 teams now, that's about 3.6 million going to the girls. And it's not enough to live off, if we're honest. 30k, I don't think many of us in chat could live off 30k. But you're in that catch-22 situation now that the American League, its revenue is allowing the women to be played. And my question is the AFL going to look at what the Americans have done? Because the Women's League was rebranded 5 years ago, and they tried to copy Australia by having the same team names, the same clubs have a women's team. They went a different way, and they saw a hole in the men's market that men didn't care about Dallas's football team because they have the Cowboys. They didn't care about the New York team because the Yankees were their team. And they created their own franchises and created a whole new concept, whole new competition. I was reading about what the women's sport is, and it's a lot child-friendly. While the game's going on, they have childcare facilities there, soccer skill camps as the game's going on. It's become a real event for families. They've gone down that avenue where it's not like European football, we get pissed and chant. They've done it as a real big thing and said, look, let's make a new competition and let's give the people what you can't get in the men's. Let's not try and copy the men's. Let's be our own entity. And it starts, if you go on the MLS women's site, how technology that is. It's not a crappy website like Our Women. It's a proper website with people popping up, singing, dancing. The sponsorships, you've got Chrysler wanting to be sponsoring the women's competition, not the men's. Like, let that sink in. Yeah. They don't want to give money to the men. They want part of the women. And it's interesting that very similar, their women's sport, that it's LGBT friendly, that it's real heavily pushed, which is one of the complaints in Australia, that it's a social league. In the women, it's been embraced because it's that, because the women are having the balls, pardon the pun, to talk about the social issues where the men just want to get paid $1 million salaries. So I thought it was an interesting conversation to have.
No, I think it is an interesting conversation, and you're right. You can't live off 30k, and it's just impossible for anybody, male or female, in that instance. And when you put it into perspective like that, and you say 3.6 million just to the female programs, some AFL men's players get paid just that in a salary across 2 or 3 years. So there's a huge gap there, and it's difficult. It's a difficult conversation to have because you have the argument that they're not full time, they have other jobs, which is fair, like, because they're not put in the same category as men because their season is shorter, but the workload doesn't change. Like, the training load is exactly the same as it would be in an elite men's team. They train twice a week, game on a weekend, reviews, they've got physio, they've got, like, and if they injure themselves, it could impact their work. So the conversations do need to happen that the girls should get paid more. It'll probably take some time before they get that equal pay, but even just a small, like, incremental approach to it where 5-10 years down the track, they do get that equal pay and they do become full-time athletes, and the season expands longer than, and even if they intertwine it with the VFLW season, I don't know, but it's a conversation that needs to happen. And it's quite interesting that, especially in the US, where I know soccer has only recently become a more popular thing because of, for whatever reason, I think we've tried AFL over in the US and it hasn't taken off quite as well as soccer has over there. So, no, it's definitely a conversation worth having.
Well, I think it's a weird, interesting thing because, I mean, it's weird because I've got a few American friends, and when we talk about soccer, as they call it, that they actually associate it as a chick sport, is what they'll say. Like,
well, that's just rude.
No, because they watch it and it's all females playing. They think men don't take it serious. And then obviously as a pom, I'm like, it's our national sport, mate. Like, it's men play football in the UK. It's male dominated and women's is catching up. But they're actually starting to see it as men play football, which is for girls. So they actually have got a mindset that men are equal because they're allowed to play football, not realizing the heritage is men and women came second to play football. So I just look at the things that the AFL do. Like, one of the things I think is a big loss is in 2019, the AFL signed that deal with Toyota for it to be the Toyota Premiership. They beat 7 other companies bidding for it. For me, that's for 6 months sponsorship. So that works out about 18 million a year. Why aren't the AFL adding the women and saying, look, we can call this the Toyota AFLW Premiership, because in England, our Premier League, it's uniform. It's the same company sponsors both. And we started charging more. So we started saying, well, look, if you want this, we come as a package deal, 25 million, but you get 9 months of exposure as opposed to the 6 months with the men. You'll get through December, through September now, Toyota AFLW Premiership. There's little things that I think the AFL are missing, because we only really need to, I'm not talking about paying the women millions, I'm talking, let's try and get them up to 70, which is the national minimum average of Australia. So if we can double it, they can quit their jobs and work this on the salaries that they're probably sacrificing. So there's just little things that I think the AFL are missing. And I think looking at the women in America, looking at the women in tennis as well, there's quite a lot of ways you can find this money, which I think they're overcomplicating.
Yeah, look, and like I said, it's something that they could probably look at over the next 5 to 10 years once every team has their AFLW side and it's heavily aligned with the men's. So, it's a debate that'll probably go on for another 5 to 10 years, because it's not just sport where this argument's happening. So, but no, definitely something to keep our eye on, and hope that something happens.
I mean, to a POM to hear that a women's football team makes more revenue than a men's at 36 blags my head. Like, it actually, if you told me that at 15, I would have laughed at you. Gone, never going to happen. But it just shows if something's run correctly in a male-dominated sport, that's male-dominated watching, it's crazy how quickly it can grow. Because I was looking at the stats of the women's football as well in the UK, like average attendances of 20K to the internationals. Like, men are really embracing it because they've got families, and we have daughters now, and we have female cousins and things that we want to get our kids involved in. And genuinely now you're seeing the men are so big, they're so far away from us. So the women are actually more willing to interact with these young families and have them moments. Like, I was speaking to one of my friends at Rangers, who's a big Rangers fan, and one of the girls heard his son didn't get the football boots he wanted. They got stolen at Christmas, and she took him into the back of the car and gave her some of her boots that happened to be the same size as the teenage boy. And little things like that will have stick with my mate's kid for the rest of his life. Like, he's raving about it.
Yeah, see, and that's what I find with the AFLW is so engaging. Like, the girls acknowledge the grassroots side of things. And there is a bit of a gap between the way the men's interact compared to the way the women interact. And it's one of those things that I think women are just more nurturing by nature. But there is still the critics that sit behind the keyboard and feel like they need to express their hatred of AFLW. Oh, I don't watch that. Why is that going on? Well, if you're not watching it, if you are watching it, there's your first mistake, mate. If you don't want to watch it, don't put it on. Don't follow it. But if you're going to keep arcing up about how you shouldn't have AFLW, well, you're watching it, aren't you? Like, if you're watching it, you're complaining about it. But if you don't watch it, then you've got nothing to complain about. And it's quite frustrating when you say that in the UK they've embraced it, in the US they've embraced it, and you do find that the vast majority of people in Australia have accepted AFLW, and you have that small minority that are always going to be like, nah, not watching it, not putting effort into it. Well, that's their choice. But I think it's important to keep pushing AFLW because, for example, today I was at I was at Essendon. I'm just gonna put it out there. I was working, and I'm running an all girls footy event this Sunday in Ascot Vale, so not far from where I am. And when I handed the flyer to this little girl, and I go, "Oh, do you want to come along?" Her face lit up when I said it was all girls. I've never seen someone so happy to want to play football with other girls. So that kind of just melted my heart for the day. And I was like, I don't care if I hand out another flyer. I don't care if I speak to another person. This is the future of AFLW. A 7-year-old girl who's excited just to go to an event to kick a football with other girls. Like that's right there is just like the future. And if people can actually see the enjoyment that our young generation gets from playing football, maybe they'll change their tune.
Oh, I'm with you. I mean, I'm old enough to remember. I can remember growing up with girls, obviously, because we do have females in the UK. And I had a few friends who used to, when we turned teenagers, they used to have a kickabout in the park. But I remember them asking why we're separated to play football on a Thursday at school when they had to play netball. And the teacher openly saying only lesbians play football. And I look back now, and a few of my mates, a good mate of mine, Ruth, she was better than most of my mates at football when we were about 11, 12. Like, I'd want her on my team. When we played in the park, she was probably my second picked because she was pretty good. And I think how many generations we've lost then to that being a stigma that girls do girly things, boys do boy things. And then I look at it now and think, you know, like you say, that little girl there probably would have been discouraged at one point in time 20 years ago. Told, no, you don't play football. You play netball. You play hockey. And she probably has brothers who they have the time of their life. They come back covered in mud and they're all happy. And she fucking hated netball. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I've played netball with my mates. I don't understand how girls do it. Single most boringest thing in the world. But there it is. So I think it's a real important thing. Not saying you have to like AFLW, but I think you can never begrudge anyone having a bit of fun, can you? Can you not? Like,
no. Well, another story time. When I was in primary school, my dad was the coach of the school team. Shout out to Frankie Fish. And he would want to play me on the school team with the boys, but I was told by my teachers that girls don't play football with boys. Girls don't play football. I played netball for my school and I was rather okay at it. Never grew after that, but that's another story. But the fact that as I was in primary school, I wanted to play football because that's what I was brought up with up to that point. And the fact that back then they were telling us that, girls don't play football. Girls don't play football. It wasn't until I was 16 that I was actually able to play competitive girls football. And I'm 31 this year. So there's that gap between the ages of 11 to 16 where girls football for girls my age and even females older than me. Like I've listened to Debbie Lee speak before about the battles that she had playing football. Coaches that I've had that have had issues and couldn't play football for such a long time. And now that AFLW is in, I hear them. They're like, oh, I wish we had a competition like this when we were younger. Just goes to show the importance of the next generation.
I mean, and I've seen it coming from as a golf pro and teaching young girls. When I turned pro in 2005, and I remember the first golf club I had, I used to have 78 kids every Saturday and Sunday for golf camps. And I had about 12 girls. And it used to break my heart that we're going, only in 2005, girls were forbidden from playing golf on the men's golf course until 4 o'clock on a Saturday and a Sunday evening because they were deemed slow and inefficient. And some of the girls I coached for 2 years, I lobbied for 2 years to remove this ridiculous rule because my young girls couldn't play. Like, if you think 4 o'clock takes you 4 hours to play a game of golf, 8 p.m. on a Saturday, are you going to be playing golf? And it was heartbreaking because a lot of them girls, when they got to 11 to 13, the real formative years of their development, they gave up because they couldn't practice what their coach was. But the boys who were 12, they could play because they were men. And it was a real hard conversation to have with a young girl who was excited that she couldn't play in competitions because she was a girl. And when she'd ask why, and I used to say quite honestly to some of the men on the board, and they're always old white men. Do you know what I mean? Always.
Yeah,
and
always.
I used to say, I coach some of you, and I've got a 12-year-old girl here who hits the ball further than you, straighter than you, and is better than you. She's a 12-year-old girl. But you're allowed to play on a Saturday 9 o'clock? Don't make sense to me. I'd rather her play. And that is the background we've made now, that in England now it is illegal for women to have tea times at specific times. By law, they have to be able to book a tea time whenever they want, whenever they want. But it's only 20 years ago. I mean, it's not that long ago when I was 18 that women were literally banned until 4 o'clock in an afternoon. And I remember someone on the board who was the head of Yorkshire Golf looked me in the eye and said, if we let women play on a Sunday at 12, who's cooking lunch? Like, let that sink in. Let that sink in. So that is the progression. It makes me so proud that women, that little girl you handed a flyer to, she's got a hope. Because why should she not be able to play something she loves?
No. Well, while we're talking about the UK, I've actually got some friends that have moved to the UK currently, and they play AFL football in the UK. So I've been meaning to give them a shout out for some time now, and she'll be absolutely wrapped. They're the West London Wildcats. I'm not sure if you've heard of them, Pommy.
I know the Southerners have a huge Aussie league. I know down south they do. So that's exciting.
Yeah, so anybody that's watching from the UK that wants to have a crack at female football, while we're talking of encouraging females to play football, the West London Wildcats, they're part of the AFL London League. They've got the senior men's and the senior women's. So they're currently looking for recruits. So if anybody in the UK that's watching, hello, welcome aboard. Check out the West London Wildcats. They've had some pretty good success from what I've seen on Instagram the last little while. So give them a crack.
If there is any Poms as well, can we have some northern teams instead of these soft southerners? Like, I've dated a lot of northern women, and I can tell you they're harder than some men. I tell you, they're tough. They're tough. Like, I could build a team, I reckon, of Yorkshire females and win the AFLW within 5 years. Like, they're hard as coffin nails, them girls. Hard. So come on,
girls are pretty tough from what I know.
Give a 19th team to me, and we'll be the Poms, and I'll coach these Northerners. But honestly, it's great to hear. And I tell you what, if you've ever played sport, Chris here talking about he's got female friends who play sport. Honestly, it is a stigma, but I tell you what, as a golf coach, I would rather coach women over men. I tell you what, someone who's over the age of 30, I always used to say it, give me the old ladies any day because they fucking listen. When they're over 30, men just argue and think they know better even though they're paying me for their service. Women never had it. Women would just do exactly as I said because they're paying me. Like that.
And we're called sponges. We absorb everything and
it's the same as work as well. I would rather train some of the girls in the sales than the men any day because a girl just says, I can't do it. Tell me how to do it. She goes and does it. A man will be like, oh, I've done it this way though. But I don't care how you like it. I'm helping you. So fucking men. Hate them.
Let's take a step to the right here. And we'll bring in Michelle's tips for the week. Finish on a good note. For those that are new to the show, we have an AFLW tipping competition through the Carlton Cheer Squad. And we've also just recently launched the men's competition tipping comp. So head to the Carlton Cheer Squad page for all details on how to join that. That being said, Michelle has presented me with her tips for the week. They are back home in Melbourne, safe and sound. Good to have you home, guys. This week, Michelle has gone for Fremantle, Richmond, Melbourne, St Kilda, Collingwood, Brisbane, and the Baggers.
Oh, no, she's tipped us.
She's tipped us.
Okay, so I'm gonna. Isn't she 100% when she tips against us?
Well, yeah, she has been so far. But we're on a winning formula here, Pommy. So we got to try and.
I'd never go against Michelle. I'd never go against the tips. Far be it from me.
No, Mish is full picking the Baggers this week, so I am backing her decision. But I think we've come to the end. Pommy, we've been on for 50 minutes. We've kept people up to 9:30 tonight. So apologies once again for the delayed start. We'll be back to normal programming next week. Fingers crossed, 8 p.m. But I just wanted to thank you once again for being my esteemed co-host. We do have a really good rapport going here. So you're more than welcome to come back next week if we get the dub. Because it's good to have you on when we get the winning feeling happening, and let's hope it rolls into tomorrow's practice match. Before I go, we are playing St Kilda tomorrow morning. Pom is doing a watch along, so for those that can't make it for work commitments or anything else, jump on the watch along if you can. Listen to Pommy's banter; it's fantastic. I love watching it. Love being a part of it. But yeah, thank you once again, Pom, for joining me this evening.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Always. Have a good night.